Hi Southwest kids, good to see you again. We are going to talk about Rebecca and Isaac and how important it is to God about families. And we're going to talk about Isaac and Rebecca's family and how we are a part of their plan and a part of their family, and we can also be a part of God's family. So families are very important to God, and so we're going to talk about that today. But how were families back in Abraham's and Isaac's day different from our families? They probably lived in tents, in which none of us probably live in a tent. And they probably had like their grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles, and if they had an older daughter that hadn't been married, then she would be living there. And if you had a son, then his wife and then all of their family, they would still be living there with their family. So they might have a huge family that all lived together and traveled together and just did things together. How great would that be, to be living with your grandma and grandpa and your aunts and your uncles and your cousins and all under one tent? So you might have to consider that. But I have some pictures here of some families. Like these are just stick people. But this one here has like a grandma and a grandpa. And then this one's funny because it shows a baby and then a cat and a dog and a fish and a kitty cat. So, but that's kind of a large family. And your family, it may just have your mom and your dad and you. And that's just an awesome family too. And then you might have a family where there's 5 of you. You may have a brother and a sister and then a baby. And this is kind of a picture of like my family. I've got 4 kids, and then there's the dog Bear. We have a dog that's on the end there, and his name is Bear. So anyway, we've got 6 people in our family. But families are great, okay? So grandmas and grandpas used to always live with the family. They were very important and respected, and they were a good part of the family. They would give lots of wisdom in the family. The cousins and aunts, they would live with the family too. And you would live with your cousins. Wouldn't that be so fun to get to always play with your cousins? They would be living with you. And any older sisters, like I said earlier, that hadn't had gotten married, then they would be there. And then, but they didn't have animals like a dog living with them. Like I showed you a picture of Bear living with us. I don't think they considered back in the olden days dogs to be like man's best friend or your best friend that you can hang out with and play with and throw a ball to. They didn't have domestic dogs like that probably back in the olden days. So that was a difference too. So, but we're going back to the story with God's promise to give Abraham a great, wonderful family. And since Abraham and his wife Sarah were already very old, Sarah laughed at the idea. We've already studied about that when she laughed at the idea of becoming a mother at 90 years old, and Abraham was 100. We looked that up last week. This was a mistake that Sarah made, wasn't it? That she had laughed at God, and she tried to take action and tried to take control of it herself and tried to fix anything that may have been a problem. But have you ever tried to help God? Maybe if you've been worried about something, and instead of praying about it, you're like, I'm just going to fix this myself. Okay? We've probably all done that, but we just need to give our worries and our desires to God, and He will take care of it. And He's got a plan for us. And so we just have to trust God and have faith that He's going to take care of us and take care of the plan. But Isaac was the child that Abraham and Sarah were promised. And he was, like we said, was born to Abraham when he was 100 years old. And they were so excited and thrilled that they had a child in their old age. And they were going to give Isaac the birthright. And that's a special privilege given to the firstborn son. And that's something that we don't really do nowadays, is give special treatment to the oldest son in families anymore. But that just kind of meant that he was going to get a double portion of everything. If Abraham gave Isaac $10, and then he was going to give the little sister money $5, they would only get $5. He got double everything that Abraham gave, because he was the firstborn. And he, to inherit this covenant or this promise or agreement with God, was the greatest value of all, is that we were going to get to go to heaven. That was the greatest inheritance, and also the greatest promise that we were given. So now Rebekah, was chosen for Isaac. After Sarah died, Abraham sent his oldest and most trusted servant to find a wife for his son Isaac, who was close to 40 years old. We're going to read in Genesis 24, 2-4. And it says, he said to the chief servant in his household, the one in charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I am living, but you will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac. Okay? So Abraham wanted Isaac to get a son from their region and from their time. And so he wouldn't settle for a Canaanite wife who didn't believe in the one true God. He wanted somebody that believed in God, and he wanted his daughter-in-law to be from his own relatives. He told his servant, God will send an angel before you so you can get a wife for my people. The servant, his name was probably Eliezer, by his travels by a well outside of the town of Nabor. And he felt such a huge responsibility to find a wife for Isaac. He prayed to God, and he prayed that God would show him kindness to Abraham and give him success. So Eliezer asked God that the woman would be readily give him a drink and would also water his camels, and that would be the chosen one. Even before Eliezer had finished praying, God answered his prayer. Rebekah came to the well with her water jug on her shoulders, and she was beautiful, and she was the perfect choice for her master's son. When he asked, she didn't hesitate to give him a drink, and just as quickly ran to draw water for his camels. This girl truly had a servant's heart. Eliezer had 10 thirsty camels, and each could drink up to 25 gallons of water. That's 25 milk jugs full of water that she had to get for his camels. Inquiring, he found that her father was indeed Abraham's brother. What a relief! He was so happy that he had found this woman, and Rebekah ran home to tell her family. Her brother Laban went out to meet the stranger and invited him to stay, and Eliezer quickly got to the point of his visit. He told of his request for a bride for Abraham's son Isaac, and of God's guidance. Laban and his father Bethuel had nothing to say. They recognized that God had already consented to the marriage. His mission almost complete, Eliezer was anxious to take the girl back to his master, but the family didn't want her to move that fast, and they urged him to stay and to leave the next morning. And as they approached their new home, she saw her future husband in the distance. She got off her camel and she covered herself with a veil to show respect for Isaac, her future husband. The Bible says that Isaac married and loved Rebekah. Compassion was another wonderful quality of the young Rebekah, because the scriptures tell us that she comforted Isaac after the death of his mother. What a wonderful start to a marriage. This should have been the great happily ever after tale, but there's so much more to the story of Isaac and Rebekah's marriage and family. So there's names that mean different people's names in the Bible, and then what their names mean. Abram his name meant high father. Abraham his name means the father of a multitude. Sarah, it means a noble lady. Ishmael said, God will hear. Isaac means laughter, because remember Sarah laughed. And Hagar means flight, because she left. Eleazar is God of help. So we're going to talk today about how great it is to have family, okay? God invented the family, and to get a complete picture of what God expects of our families, we're going to have some different, show some other different words that goes along with the family, okay? Just like God created the earth, and God created rain, and God created trees, God created family. Then he has a plan. God has a plan for the family. God planned for the family to learn about him and to love him. And he wants parents to teach their children every day about the word of God, and not just the days they go to church. He wants parents to talk about God with their children when they sit at home, and when they walk along the road, and when they get up in the morning, and before they go to bed. Okay, and that's the plan that God set before us. In Deuteronomy 6:6-9, it says, the commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your homes and on your gates. Okay, so in Israel's day, in Isaac's day, they did not have TV or movies or computer games. Their family time was spent in different ways. They would spend their time talking about God and memorizing his word. They didn't have the Bible in written form, so every child would memorize a lot of the scriptures. And then they would put them in their hearts so they could remember them. God planned for the family to be a happy group where everyone loves each other. And they love God, and they love their neighbors. The way to do this is to learn God's will and to obey it. So how does a family begin? Well, it begins with your mom and your dad. And from the very beginning, God's plan was for people to follow God. Okay? And then if you want to read in Deuteronomy 7:3-4, Exodus 34:13-16, and 2 Corinthians 6:14-15, God makes it very clear that our lives will be much better and easier if we marry a person who loves God and wants to go to heaven. You're young right now, but you must decide right now that you're going to choose to marry someone that will help you get to heaven. Then that was the plan one, okay? That was God's plan. Next, talking about obey, all right? When your parents ask you to read a book or to clean your room or to sweep the floor, do we do it? What do you think God expects us to do? He wants his children to obey and to respect and honor their parents. What ways can you honor and respect your parents? Well, you can obey them. And we live under a better law that tells us if we make mistakes, we can be forgiven and we can start over. And God is angry when we don't obey our parents, but we always have a chance to say, I am sorry. It is very important to remember that when you disobey your parents, that you are also disobeying God. So we always want to try to obey our parents and God. All right, and then what is it called when we can obey or not obey? It's a choice, isn't it? It's a choice. You are young, but you can still make decisions to obey or disobey every day. God did not make us robots that just do as we are programmed. He made us so that we could choose to obey or to disobey him. Which is the right choice? Of course, choosing to obey is God's will, and it's what our parents want us to do, and it's just the right choice. We could also choose to disobey, and this is the wrong choice. We will always make the right choices. Will we always make the right choices? No, we won't always make the right choices because we're not perfect. Even your moms and dads sometimes make bad choices, and we make mistakes, and we have to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Please forgive me. And nobody's perfect. Your mom and dads aren't even perfect. But God does want us to learn from our mistakes, and he will always forgive us, and he will give us a chance to do better next time. So, and then the last thing is heaven, okay? And obedience to God and your parents will bring happiness to your life, and it will help you get to heaven. We get to heaven becoming a member of another family, okay? If you don't like the family you got, if you think, man, I wish I had another family, well, guess what? When you become a Christian, then you become part of the family of God, and you always belong there in God's family. You never can get out as long as you're doing God's will and you're trying your very hardest. You will always be a part of God's family, okay? So you guys have a great week. You guys should practice drawing your family. Like I showed you pictures of the other families that I had out here. And this was another one here, okay? You should draw yours as stick people as your family, okay? And be very thankful and grateful for your family. All right, bye.